Hi guys, this is Anastasia Green. Welcome to the New Leaders Show Investors Edition. Today we're going to have a conversation with Julian Zegelman, venture capital investor and successful entrepreneur with multiple exits. We're going to have 3 startups to review, and today we're starting with the first startup that's called Workly. It's the artificial powered workforce that serves as platform as a service. Julian will go deeper into the presentation, review the pitch deck, and give valuable feedback to the team. Interested in getting a real perspective of the investor on startups? Stay tuned. Before we jump into that,
Yes.
Julian, so how many emails you usually get per day?
Oh, I mean, insane amount. I would say on an average day I get anywhere between 350 and maybe 400 emails. Now, when you take away the obvious spam and things that I can just ignore, there is still probably on any given day at least 20 companies pitching me, sending me pitch decks, blurbs, asking for investments, asking for introductions to other investors. So there's a lot of potential deal flow, both from trusted sources and then the most, we call it the outside lands. It's the most uncharted territory where people who don't know me but want my money, when they just called and they try to get my attention and introduce their company.
So we're lucky today because we have about 20 minutes for this review, but on any given day, how much time do you usually dedicate to look at one deal?
Right. Honestly, I usually decide within the first minute of reviewing a deck or reviewing an email or even hearing an introduction of a deal, whether or not I want to spend time reviewing it further.
I'm so excited for this! So that's exactly what we're going to do right now, because this is all real, guys. Julian never saw any of these decks. He doesn't know what a startup's about. He has none of preconception or no prejudgment against them or any favor towards any of them. So let's jump into the first one.
Yes, this is like just any typical review. So I've got this in an email here in a very typical fashion. I got a short summary and a pitch deck. So the first pitch deck I'm about to review is Workly. So I'm reading, it says that, okay, so it's X Weeks and X OLX co-founders, so folks who work there, and that's right away is a positive signal because venture capitalists are all about signals. So when I talk about signals, I'm trying to pick up on trends or signals or little, green lights of faith that are telling me that there is something to this deal. And when the company is very early, one of the biggest signals is the strengths and the depth of the founding team, as well as the founding team's professional backgrounds, past achievements, and what brought them to start a company in this particular sector. So the fact that this is a Wix and OLX, both very well-known, very successful tech companies, that's a positive.
Small comment on that. I have a feeling that this particular team had an access to our how to send investor template,
sure.
where Kalish, another partner, Maria, specifically mentioned that you should, if you have some work points, let's call it karma points, you should add it first. So I think that's what they did, and I'm glad that you
No, absolutely, and that works a lot. That works all the time, because if you and again, that's not to discriminate and say that a first-time founder or a recent graduate or a high school student cannot start a successful company. For example, one of the portfolio companies at a fund that I'm affiliated with is worth north of $2 billion right now. It's a company called Bolt. It's the 3rd largest ride-sharing company in the world. They don't operate in the US, but they're the Uber or the Lyft in Europe, Southeast Asia, Latin America, etc. Well, the company has been around for a few years, but when the founder started it, the founder was only 19 years old.
Wow.
And in fact, I believe just graduated high school in his native Estonia. So, not to say that people who are just starting out their professional careers cannot start successful companies, but it's a big brownie point if you've done something interesting before, and it's your responsibility to showcase that. So then, I go on and I see that the blurb that Workly is a AI-powered workforce as a service platform that helps businesses find qualified workers. Fully automated, resulted in 100% customer retention. Well, Now my biases start to kick in.
Okay, let's dive into it.
So even before I open up the pitch deck, which I'm doing here on my phone, the bias is we're in 2020.
Right.
The era of marketplaces was about a decade ago. And there was a lot of experimentation with marketplaces. There were some very early successes like Airbnb, like Uber, like Thumbtack, like TaskRabbit, almost every category. But for every successful one, there was also a lot of flameouts, a lot of unsuccessful attempts. One thing to know about marketplaces is it's very difficult to get together early on the supply and the demand. Typically, you've got pretty darn high customer acquisition costs, and when a venture capitalist looks at a straight-up startup marketplace, it's a risky investment because right away I'm thinking, they probably don't have the traction yet, they probably don't have the revenue, and to really get it up to a point where there's a lot of buyers and sellers, basically supply and demand on the platform, you really got to spend a lot of money, and you really got to look and see.
Your money.
My money, right? Exactly. Which in turn is my investors' money, right? Which obviously is a risk. So that's a bias. And one thing that I'm thinking about right away, because I'm biased now, is do they have traction?
Right.
Because a marketplace without traction is really like just rolling some dice, right? In Las Vegas, you're either gonna get lucky or you're not. But logically speaking, you cannot really make any logical, educated assumptions about it because there is no data. But now I'm actually intrigued, and so I open up the pitch deck and I see that whoever put this pitch deck together either paid a professional or they're really good with Adobe Acrobat or graphic design software, and that's always good. Because as a professional pet peeve, I look at dozens of pitch decks and presentations a day,
right? And
it really helps when the presentation is well formatted, fits a typical 10 to 12 slide format, well done, less words, more pictures and graphics. So far so good, slide one. So it sounds like what the company is trying to do is it's trying to put together some temporary staffing talent with companies that need to either find replacement talent for missed shifts or high turnover shifts, or it's a seasonal thing. Your neighborhood store is really busy during Christmas and they gotta hire a bunch of people temporarily, and where do you go and do that? Okay, so no big surprise here. It's an online platform that helps workers get different types of gigs on short notice, and also helps businesses find qualified workers to fill those shifts. And I think automation, immediacy, and short notice are the big buzzwords here. Okay, so I'm looking at the market slide, which again, so far presentation, the deck is done well, follows a typical Silicon Valley format. I see that it's a large market where there is a total addressable market of 120 billion. There is a specific addressable market of 17 billion. There's the immediate market that this company could go into of 2.5 billion, and that's great. Because
no red flags by now.
No red flags by now. I'm still intrigued, so I'm still looking. And the market is important because another thing that I'm always thinking about when somebody pitches me an idea, even if the idea has traction and revenue, I'm immediately trying to fast forward the movie to the finishing credits and think, how much can this company be worth? And the valuation is oftentimes really the function of the company's revenue and the size of the market, right? Because whoever is buying that company wants to make sure that there is enough cash flow and enough, future growth to make the investment worthwhile. Nobody wants to buy Yahoo in 2017, right? Because the glory days are over. Unlike cars, companies don't turn classic; they just go out of business. So this is good news because sometimes the problem is when you have a very small market, a niche market, and this may sound counterintuitive to a lot of you, but in the world of venture capital, anything less than $1 billion a year in market size is considered niche. Not to say that you cannot start a very successful lifestyle business, provide for your family, even probably buy a boat, maybe even a big boat, but it's not going to be the type of venture capital opportunity that the institutional and some of the larger and the better funds will be interested in. So anything north of $1 billion, that's where the VCs start looking at. So no red flags so far. There's a pretty good slide on competition, which again is wonderful. Anytime I'm told that there is no competition for a product,
that's my favorite.
Right? Isn't right?
Yes,
That's your favorite.
It is. We have no competition
right.
in the market.
And then the question is, well, maybe there is no competition because nobody needs it, right?
Exactly.
So it's good, you know. I see that there is definitely there's definitely a lot of competition. I see that there is some established companies like Craigslist, Indeed, Snag a Job. There's actually more. There's agencies, the old school agencies. There's some startups. So now I'm thinking that, well, this is kind of like a crowded. So far, you know, two red flags. Marketplace,
right.
which is difficult to pull off, and it's a pretty competitive, tight space. So competitive advantage. Ooh, and this is great, because whenever I'm looking at the company, I want to know the secret sauce. So what distinguishes you from the competition? What gives you, in the words of Warren Buffett, what gives you an unfair advantage that's about to last, you know, for years and years and years? And this is where, you know, this gets my attention. I'm intrigued, and here we go. Workly's competitive advantage is that once a shift is completed, workers automatically get paid within 24 hours. If you're a worker, that's a wonderful feature. The question is, how much of a competitive advantage is it? Because if the employer is okay paying within 24 hours, in this day and age, there's so many payment processors and solutions and payroll
right.
providers and escrow services and mobile payment solutions, it's really not that difficult to to pull off.
Yeah, talking about marketplaces, you have Fiverr, right?
You got Fiverr,
It's
absolutely.
so easy, you get paid right away.
Exactly, you get paid right away. There's other solutions like that. So I use a couple of services, for example, for to do some errands around the house, or do some repairs, etc. And it's the same thing, right? Your credit card is on file. The worker actually gets paid immediately. So gets paid within 24 hours. Not so much for a competitive advantage.
Yeah, so it's great that they try to put the competitive advantage as a separate thing, but it's not really that strong of a competitive
Not that strong of a competitive advantage, and maybe it's a function of the company's early stage, right? So it would be very powerful, for example, if the company could say, we have 30% penetration into restaurant workers,
right.
or we have 300,000 seasonal laborers on our platform, or we're the most popular Spanish language, Spanish-speaking temporary staffing app, something tangible. Now 24 hours, close but no cigar. So I look at the business model. No big surprises here. It's a marketplace, so clearly the company Workly is planning to take a percentage. As a former lawyer, and I practiced law in Silicon Valley for almost 15 years, I immediately think about all the different legislation that came into effect last year. For example, the state of California passed a new law that makes it very difficult for employers to classify even temporary labor as independent contractors. So right away I'm thinking about, well, how is this going to impact it, right? So then I'm going on, and this is the big one, right? The team. So wonderful. I see I see that the team, it's a great old combination of hacker and a hustler. I see that there is a CEO with business experience. I see that there is a CTO with relevant experience. I don't see. Okay, so this is my pet peeve.
Oh.
And again, maybe my almost 20 years in the industry made me a bit of a cynic, and I could be quite cynical. Yeah, just a little bit, but I don't. So I'm going to read this verbatim. So, for example, in CTO's profile, it says engineer and entrepreneur with experience in multi-billion-dollar companies. This is great, and I know that Wix, for example, is a multi-billion-dollar company, but I really want to know what the CTO did, right? I know that Wix is a multi-billion-dollar company, and I know that an Uber driver could also say
works.
that an Uber driver has experience working for a publicly traded company with market cap. I haven't looked at Nasdaq this morning, but whatever it is, right? $40 billion, whatever it is. I haven't looked. I sold my Uber stock, so that's one right away. It's nice to try and jump on brands or your past experience, but it's better to be more humble and specific and say that I was a junior database administrator, but here's what I did. Maybe I was the best performing junior database administrator, than to be vague, right? Because I really want to know what did you do?
Right.
Okay, so
tangible results,
accomplishments, clear-cut job responsibilities, clear-cut examples. The CEO, same thing. 7 years of experience in building leading marketplaces in 8 countries in Europe and the CIS region. Give me those marketplaces. What were they, right? So I can go ahead if I'm interested. I don't have to send an email and say, oh, could you please expand on that? Could you provide me, more? I don't have to go hunt you on LinkedIn and see if you put your job experience there. I can just Google, right? I can say, okay, so you put together, you put logo A, logo B, logo C. Those are the marketplaces you were at. Maybe you were an early employee here. Maybe you were just here for 6 months. But at least I can, I can form an opinion. There's also nothing in this deck. There's nothing in this deck about traction. So that makes me, just assume that the company is at a pre-launch, which is your classic friends and family round. As they say, friends, family, and fools. Or as one of my mentors used to say after drinking a scotch or two, this is really bad, and I mean no disrespect to dentists, but he used to say, oh, well, they've got a lot of DD investors, and they used to mean back in the old, not so politically correct day, dumb dentists. Right. Because I guess he had an experience in his portfolio where a company raised a lot of money from professionals in the medical and dental industry and flamed out very quickly because it was trying to launch rockets to the moon, which is not something that your typical dentist really understands. But your typical dentist does have some extra cash to throw around. So, but I'm not that mean, and I call it FFF, right? Friends, family, and fools. So in summary, the presentation is great. The deck is very well done. There's a few cosmetic issues with being more precise about past experience. As far as fundability, this kind of company, without showing some traction numbers, right away goes into my too early folder. Now, it doesn't go into the red folder that I will ignore emails and calls from this person for the rest of, block ever, don't ever want to look at it, etc., because there is a grain of a good potential opportunity here. Anything else to say about it is pure speculation, because it's either going to take off or not, but we can't know that today, and we're not going to know that today.
Right.
So this one kind of goes into a mental and email folder that I actually have, which is too early.
Would you respond?
I would probably respond and say just that. I would say thank you so much for sharing, couple of tips. If I'm not too busy, if I'm busy, it would really just be thank you, good luck, too early. And then every once in a while, usually on vacation when I've got nothing else to do, I do open up my too early folder and I just kind of look and Google and test some of my old assumptions and see how, can I find out how the company is doing, etc. But this is very, very early because we know nothing about traction.
Question.
Yes.
How many companies out of that folder that goes into too early follow up with you with their updates?
Wonderful, wonderful question. Very few, which I think is a big, big mistake, because in the past I have actually I've invested in companies 6 months, a year, or sometimes 2 years later, and certainly invested in the same entrepreneurs, but with a different business model.
Right.
Because, we all evolve, we all learn, businesses evolve, and just because it's early today, it doesn't mean that in 6 months or a year, it's not going to be a good opportunity. So in fact, right now there is a company that's still a bit early, but definitely getting to that threshold where I would be taking a deeper look. And for past 12 months, they're very good, very strategic about sending updates. They do it usually about once a month, sometimes once every 3 months. And it's a great combination of giving, staying on the radar, but not inundating, and being very strategic about what they say. They don't email me and saying, oh, we got a new coffee machine in the office. right? But they disclose their financials. They said, oh, we just doubled our monthly recurrent revenue. We just hired a new engineer. We just launched a new feature in our product. So yeah, definitely follow up. Absolutely. Don't get discouraged. Yeah, follow up. Follow up is golden.
If you're interested in getting real perspective of the investor on a startup, stay with us.